Ever had your entire career stolen by someone you trained? Before I dive into this story, one that still makes my blood boil, I just want to ask you, if you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or flat out betrayed at work, hit that like button. Drop a comment if you've ever felt the sting of injustice. And hey, if you want more real stories like this one, subscribe. Trust me, this one's going to stick with you. I have. And let me tell you something. It doesn't feel like betrayal at first. It feels like confusion, like walking into a room and realizing all the furniture has been rearranged while you were asleep. You know something's wrong, but you can't quite name it yet. My name's not important. What matters is what I built and how it was taken. For 12 years, I worked at a mid-sized tech company based in Austin. Nothing glamorous. We weren't Google, but we were solid, profitable, a good place to grow roots if you weren't chasing fame, just purpose. I started in a tiny cubicle with a broken monitor and a half-dead desk plant, left on a floor with glass walls and my own team. I wasn't the loudest, but I had a knack for fixing things others gave up on. Broken systems, failed projects, demotivated teams. My weapon was always ideas. I didn't talk much, but when I did, people listened. Until one day, they stopped. It started when they brought in a new director to modernize operations. His name? Doesn't matter. Let's call him Tyler. He came from a bigger company with a title longer than a CVS receipt and teeth too white to trust. At first, I didn't think much of it. I've seen directors come and go like Texas thunderstorms, flashy, loud, and gone by the weekend. But Tyler was different. He didn't just want to impress the board, he wanted credit, fame, recognition, the kind that doesn't come from teamwork, but from headlines. He zeroed in on me within a week, started sitting in on my meetings, asking questions that sounded curious but felt invasive. How did you come up with that optimization model? Can you walk me through your process again? I thought he was learning. I even felt flattered, idiot. Because one morning, during an all-hands meeting, our VP of Strategy pulled up a deck titled Project Phoenix, Next Gen Operational Efficiency. And there it was, my model, my entire system, my architecture, on the screen, under Tyler's name. I froze. My mouth went dry, my hands trembling slightly under the table, and the worst part? He looked right at me, smiled, as if daring me to say something. That was the moment I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was war. If you've ever worked in corporate, you know the smell of danger isn't always smoke. It's silence, quiet meetings, sudden exclusions, invitations that don't arrive. That's what followed after that meeting. No confrontation, no questions, just quiet. Tyler had taken the first shot, and everyone saw it. But no one said a word. I tried to play it cool, tell myself maybe it was a misunderstanding, maybe he would correct it later. Maybe this was just how things worked now, that you get steamrolled by leadership and pretend it's mentorship. Spoiler, it wasn't. The next few days were a blur of politeness with sharp edges. Tyler started referring to the project as his brainchild in hallway conversations. He name-dropped it in exec meetings like it was tattooed on his chest. He didn't even change the core diagrams. I recognized my notes, my terminology, my phrasing, like echoes of myself bouncing back at me with someone else's mouth moving. And the others? They watched. Some looked uncomfortable, some just looked away. I thought about saying something to my manager, Denise. She'd always backed me up before, but when I stepped into her office to bring it up, her tone was different. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't look me in the eye. "Let's focus on the team," she said. "Tyler brings a lot of energy to the table. You're still on the project, aren't you?" Like that was supposed to be comforting. That was the moment I realized something else. I wasn't just being sidelined, I was being erased. My responsibilities started to shift, slowly, subtly. Reports I used to handle were rerouted. Tyler requested to streamline the workflow, which meant cutting me out of strategic updates. Meetings I was always invited to, suddenly full. Calendar blocks vanishing before I could even click accept. But what really got me wasn't the exclusion. It was how smoothly it happened. It was like watching someone move into your house while you were still living in it, rearranging your furniture, changing the locks, smiling while they did it. And just when I thought maybe I was being paranoid, I found the proof. A file, sitting open on a shared drive I wasn't supposed to have access to. Tyler's notes for a keynote he was prepping for a national industry summit. My model, word for word, rebranded, repackaged, with a flashy new name, TylerNet Framework. He even added a footnote quoting a book I recommended to him. That's when the confusion finally burned off. This wasn't an accident. He was building his career on my back. There's a moment right before your stomach drops, where your brain still tries to rationalize, to protect you. Maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe he really didn't know. I stared at that file on the shared drive for 10 solid minutes, just blinking at my own work with someone else's name on it. TylerNet Framework. He even made a logo. And it wasn't just the model. It was the language I had developed over months of trial and error. Phrases like agile through stability loop and modular performance anchors. I invented those. They were inside jokes between me and my notebook. He had copied my innovation and put his signature on it like it was a birthday card. I wanted to confront him right then, march into his office and slam my laptop on his fancy reclaimed wood desk. But I didn't, because I knew, deep down, this wasn't just about ego. It was strategy, and I needed to be smarter. Instead, I watched. I started keeping notes, screenshots, dates, email threads, my original documents, his edited versions. I turned myself into a silent witness to my own robbery. And the more I watched, the more I realized this wasn't the first time he'd done this. During a planning session, I overheard him repeating a strategy I'd shared casually over lunch, almost word for word. In another meeting, he pitched a system change I'd floated to him in a Slack message at midnight, because I still believed we were collaborating. It hit me like a cold wave. I hadn't been mentoring him. I'd been feeding him. He was positioning himself as the savior of the company's operations. Fresh blood with a revolutionary plan, the golden boy who could modernize legacy systems with style. And me? I was the ghost. The workhorse in the background. The guy who made things work but never asked for the spotlight. And that's exactly why he targeted me. Because I made it easy. I didn't fight for credit. I didn't brag. I let results speak. And in a world full of loud mouths and LinkedIn flexes, people like me get mistaken for weak. But I wasn't weak. I was patient. Still, it hurt. It hurt more than I expected. Because it wasn't just a stolen idea. It was my identity, my long nights, my breakthroughs, my value, stripped and resold like a used car. And yet, I stayed quiet. For now. Because I wanted to see how far he'd take it. How bold he'd get. How sloppy. And believe me, he got sloppy. There's something uniquely painful about watching someone else get praised for the thing you built with your own hands. It's like sitting front row at your own funeral, listening to strangers tell your life story, all wrong, and clapping while they do it. The quarterly board review was coming up. Big room, big suits, bigger egos. Normally, I'd be one of the people presenting. I'd even coached junior managers on how to talk strategy in that room. But this time, I wasn't even on the invite list. That alone told me everything I needed to know. But I showed up anyway, not to speak, just to watch. I stood near the back wall, leaning against the cold glass like I belonged there. Technically, I did. 12 years buys you that much. The room buzzed with energy. Executives, advisors, even a few investors dialed in remotely. And then Tyler walked in. Slick suit, too confident. He nodded at a few people like a politician working a crowd. Then he plugged in his laptop and pulled up the presentation. TylerNet Framework, a scalable vision for operational renaissance. I almost laughed out loud. He had a slide with my original sketches. He'd traced them and added gradients. He had bullet points lifted straight from an email I sent him 6 months ago titled, Early Thoughts Not Final. He even used my client example about the Arizona rollout that saved us $300,000 last year. I stood there, frozen. No one looked my way. No one asked a question. They were too busy nodding. One VP leaned forward and said, This is exactly the kind of leadership we've been missing. And Tyler, like the snake he is, didn't even blink. It's been a team effort, he said with this performative humility that made me want to flip the conference table. But I've had to rethink a lot of what wasn't working. Legacy methods, legacy tools, legacy mindsets. I felt that. Legacy. That was me. That was what I was now. A euphemism for old, slow, outdated. The rest of the room clapped. I didn't. I turned and walked out, feeling like my ribs were made of glass. Not because I lost something, but because I saw what he was building with it. A throne. And every brick came from my blueprint. That day something inside me shifted. Not just anger, not just grief, strategy. Because now it wasn't about proving I was right. It was about making sure he couldn't sit on that throne for long. They say the best revenge is massive success, but what they don't tell you is that trying to succeed under someone actively sabotaging you is like trying to run a marathon with a weight vest and someone loosening your shoelaces every mile. After the board meeting, I went into overdrive. I wasn't going to whine, I wasn't going to beg, I was going to work. Harder, smarter. I started sketching new strategies, refining systems that Tyler didn't even understand yet. I took on messy projects no one wanted. Low profile, high complexity. The kind of work that didn't look sexy in presentations, but kept the whole operation from falling apart. I made sure everything I touched ran smooth as silk. Not for them, for me. I wanted to prove, even quietly, that I was still the brain behind the curtain. At first I thought it was working. I started getting thank you notes from middle managers. My inbox pinged with requests for help. Requests they didn't dare send to Tyler because, well, he didn't have answers. Just slides and buzzwords, but then my name stopped showing up on documents I'd contributed to. Little things. Harmless at first, then bigger. I'd write a full proposal, send it up the chain, and a week later I'd see a near-identical version presented at the leadership sink, authored by someone else. When I asked about it, I got vague responses. Oh, we thought that was just brainstorming. Tyler said it was already in development. Must have been a miscommunication. Miscommunication. That word started to feel like a weapon. Meetings got mysteriously rescheduled when I was out sick. Reports I submitted suddenly couldn't be found. And the final nail. A junior associate, I'd mentored her for a year, stopped replying to my messages altogether. When we passed in the hallway, she looked away like I was radioactive. The message was clear. I was being boxed out. And Tyler? He just kept rising. Promotions, praise, pats on the back. He even started speaking on behalf of our department at town halls. Told a story once about his early career struggles that sounded suspiciously like mine. I wish I could say I confronted him then and there, that I stood in the middle of the office and yelled the truth, but I didn't, because I knew shouting wouldn't fix anything. The system was rigged. This wasn't about being louder. It was about being undeniable. And that kind of proof takes time. So I kept my head down, but I also started digging. Because the one thing Tyler underestimated, I wasn't just smart, I was watching. There's a weight that comes with being quietly targeted. Not fired, not demoted, just slowly erased. At first it's hard to describe. A look that lingers too long, a laugh that ends too quickly when you walk in. The silence after your name is mentioned in a meeting. But then it starts getting louder. It started when someone from HR sent me an email, just checking in. Polite, friendly, a tone so sweet it felt like it was hiding a needle. We've noticed some shifts in team dynamics, it said. Let us know if there's anything we can support you with. Shifts in dynamics. I almost replied, you mean the part where I'm being isolated, discredited, and used as a stepping stone? But I didn't, because I knew better. I wasn't just on the outside of a team. I was on the wrong side of a story being rewritten in real time, and I didn't even get to hold the pen. It got worse. Slack messages started getting ignored. I'd see people online, typing in other channels, but my messages sat unread, or worse, left on seen. One day, a colleague I'd helped get hired walked past me in the break room without a word. No nod. No hey, just air. The worst part? No one ever said anything directly. It was death by 1,000 subtweets. I'd offer a suggestion in a meeting and get silence. 2 minutes later, Tyler would rephrase it slightly and get nods of approval. One manager even said, now that's innovative thinking, like I hadn't just said the same exact thing. And you know what stings the most? It wasn't just professional, it was personal. These were people I'd celebrated wins with, stayed late with, shared inside jokes over cold pizza and broken deadlines. Now they looked at me like I was a problem no one wanted to deal with. I started doubting myself. I'd reread my own emails 3 times before sending, second-guessed my tone in meetings. Wonder if maybe, just maybe, I was imagining it all. But deep down, I knew. This was planned. Tyler wasn't just after my work, he was after my credibility. Because once that's gone, you're just a guy complaining. No one listens to the guy who complains. They listen to the guy who wins, and Tyler was still winning. But not for long. Because while he was busy polishing his image, I was building a case, and the cracks were starting to show. The email came at 7:43 a.m. on a Thursday. Subject line, Performance Review Discussion, 1 current p.m. Today, no context, no prep materials, no checklist. Just a calendar invite and a pit in my stomach. Now, I've been through dozens of evaluations. I know the drill. You walk in, they pat you on the back, mention a few soft critiques to make it feel fair, then drop your bonus percentage and tell you to keep doing great things. But this time, the air was different before I even entered the room. Denise, my manager, was sitting stiffly at the table. Tyler was already there, of course, legs crossed, posture too relaxed. That fake polished confidence dripping off him like cologne. There was a folder in front of him with my name on it. I sat. They didn't offer coffee, didn't even say hi. Denise cleared her throat. Thanks for joining us. We wanted to have a transparent conversation today. That word again. Transparent. In corporate, that usually means, we're about to hit you, but smile so it looks like feedback. She opened the folder and began reading off bullet points. Concerns around collaboration. Inconsistencies in communication. Lack of visibility in strategic alignment. I blinked. Was she talking about me? I leaned forward. Could you clarify that last point? Tyler jumped in, smooth and smug. It's about impact. We've noticed your recent contributions haven't translated into forward momentum for the department. Translated. My entire model, his framework, was the momentum. I opened my mouth to speak, but Denise cut in. We just want to be clear. This is a formal review, not disciplinary yet. Yet. That word felt like a slap. I sat there swallowing anger like shards of glass, because I knew what this was. This wasn't feedback. This was documentation. They were building a paper trail, a future justification for something they'd already decided. And Tyler? He didn't even look at me, just watched the room like he was already mentally updating his LinkedIn. I took a breath, steady and cold. So just to be clear, after 12 years, after leading the operational restructuring during the pandemic, after saving the Phoenix rollout, this is the evaluation I get. Tyler finally turned to me, smiled. We're evolving. Sometimes not everyone keeps pace. That line, so rehearsed it almost sounded harmless, but I felt the blood rise in my ears. I nodded. No argument, no protest, because what they didn't know was that while they were documenting me, I was documenting them. And I was about to flip the script. I should have seen it coming. After that performance review, every day at work felt like walking a tightrope, with someone shaking the wire just to see if I'd fall. Tyler avoided me in meetings now, not out of guilt, but like I'd already been written off the page. Denise stopped making eye contact. People I used to joke with by the coffee machine barely muttered a hey anymore. I became a ghost in the building I helped build, and still, I showed up. I kept doing my work, quietly, precisely, like a surgeon performing an operation even though the hospital's already been condemned. Then it came. Friday morning, overcast sky. My badge still beeped green at the front desk. I made it halfway through my first coffee when I saw the email, HR request, private meeting 10:01 a.m. That was it. No subject, no emotion. Just an appointment with the axe. I don't remember walking to the office, just the cold sweat down my back, the metallic taste of fury in my mouth. HR sat on one side, Denise and Tyler on the other. 3 people. One conclusion. We've made the decision to terminate your employment, effective immediately. My ears rang. I stared at the table. No explanation, no room for appeal. Due to recent structural changes and performance misalignments, that's when I stopped listening. Because something inside me, something deep, forged from years of loyalty and long nights, just snapped. Not in rage, in clarity. They weren't just firing me, they were trying to erase me, completely. My legacy, my ideas, my reputation, just delete like I was a corrupted file. I didn't shout, I didn't cry. I just sat up straighter, looked Tyler in the eye, and smiled. I understand. He blinked. Maybe he expected a meltdown. Maybe he thought I'd beg, make a scene, or give him a reaction he could use as ammo. But I wasn't giving him a damn thing, except the one thing he never saw coming: dignity. I signed the papers, collected my things, walked past the office where I'd spent years turning chaos into structure, and as I stepped out into the sharp morning air, one thought followed me like a drumbeat. You made your empire out of my ideas, and now I'm going to make your empire collapse with the same precision I used to build it. Rock bottom doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it sounds like your apartment at 3 a.m., silent, except for the hum of the fridge and the echo of your own thoughts. The day after I got fired, I couldn't bring myself to get out of bed. I just stared at the ceiling, feeling this strange weight in my chest. Not just grief, not even rage. Something worse. Emptiness. I'd given over a decade of my life to that company. Birthdays, holidays, weekends. I'd slept under my desk more times than I could count, skipped vacations to keep things afloat, watched people come and go while I stayed. Consistent, reliable, invisible. And now, I was just gone. No farewell. No handshake. Just silence. I opened LinkedIn. Tyler had already posted a photo from the boardroom, smiling next to the VP, captioned, "Proud to be leading innovation through the TylerNet framework. Honored to have the support of our amazing leadership team." My model, my system, my blood, sweat, and years. The comments were full of praise. Visionary work, Tyler. So inspiring. True leadership in action. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. I wanted to scream, to punch something. But instead I just closed the laptop and cried. Not like a movie cry, not dramatic, just quiet, exhausted, hopeless tears. I had savings. Not much. Not, "You just lost your career" savings. Rent was due in 2 weeks. My health insurance ended in 30 days. Every friend I made at the company had gone radio silent. I was alone, utterly and completely alone. And yet, somewhere in that fog, something sparked. Maybe it was when I found the folder on my old USB drive, a backup I'd forgotten about. Inside it, every original draft of the TylerNet framework, dated, authored, tracked. My fingerprints were everywhere. Or maybe it was when I found an email chain between me and Tyler, weeks before the board presentation, where I clearly explained the concepts he later claimed as his own. Suddenly the emptiness started to shift, not into peace, into purpose. I couldn't go back. That door was locked and burned. But I could still make them regret ever thinking I was replaceable, because now I had nothing left to lose. And when someone's got nothing left to lose, that's when you should really start worrying. Vengeance doesn't start with fire, it starts with silence. 3 days after I was fired, I sat in my apartment with nothing but a notebook, a pot of burnt coffee, and a new purpose. I wasn't going to slash tires or scream online. That's noise. Noise fades. I wanted impact. Permanent. Measurable. Professional. So I started with a list. Every person who knew the truth. Every doc I had access to. Every mistake Tyler had made trying to repurpose a system he didn't even understand. And there were plenty. Because here's the thing about guys like Tyler. They know how to sell but not how to sustain. They grab headlines, win short games, but behind the curtain it's chaos. He was trying to implement my system across multiple teams, but he didn't have the full architecture, only the surface. That meant failure wasn't a matter of if, it was when, and I was going to make sure when came fast. First move? I reached out to a former colleague. Let's call her Leah. Smart, honest, and just disillusioned enough to take my call. She told me everything. Apparently, since my departure, Tyler had accelerated rollout to impress upper leadership, but he skipped key calibration steps. Things only I knew how to manage. Teams were already struggling. Client feedback was coming in negative. Deadlines were slipping. Morale's tanking, she said, but he just keeps smiling, keeps saying it's part of the process. I smiled too, for the first time in days. Then I got to work. I compiled the original documentation, clean, time-stamped, with version histories. I organized the emails, including one where Tyler literally wrote, "Let's keep your name out of the deck for clarity." Clarity. Sure. I wrote a formal brief. Clear, neutral, professional. No drama, just facts. A full comparative analysis showing what was mine, what was altered, and how misusing it would lead to systemic failure. I didn't send it to the company. I sent it to someone bigger, a consultant I'd worked with during a multi-company integration, someone now embedded in a major investment group that held significant stock in my former employer. The subject line? Potential operational risk attached to key leadership claims. No anger, no threats, just the truth, and a little spark. A match resting gently on a pile of dry leaves. It was only a matter of time now, and when it lit, the fire would be glorious. It's funny how fast people forget to cover their tracks when they think the threat is gone. In the weeks after I was fired, Tyler got careless, bold, arrogant, and arrogance leaves fingerprints. I started digging through every folder, every shared drive I still had access to, through old links, old emails. You'd be surprised how many internal decks are left open in the cloud, especially when the guy in charge thinks he already won. One afternoon, while sipping coffee from a chipped mug that had outlasted my entire career, I found it, an internal roadmap Tyler had drafted for the next quarter. It outlined Phase 2 of the TylerNet framework, except it included processes I'd never published, internal logic I never approved for rollout. He was improvising, and badly. I cross-referenced the draft with client accounts. Turns out 2 enterprise-level clients were already experiencing implementation delays because Tyler had promised capabilities that weren't scalable. I had warned him about that in a memo last year. He ignored it then. He was paying for it now, and soon so would everyone else. I started gathering names, people in legal, finance, tech ops, anyone who'd seen the original model. Quietly, I reached out to 3 of them, pitched it gently. Not a crusade, just, help me verify something. They did more than verify. They forwarded confidential memos, internal chats, even a voice recording of Tyler on a team call saying, "The original creator's no longer with us, but we're moving forward with the structure. Doesn't matter who built it, it's mine now, that quote gold." Meanwhile, the consultant I'd sent the brief to, he replied, said he was concerned, said he was escalating, and I knew what that meant. The board would find out. The investors, the clients. But I wasn't done yet. There was still one more piece missing. Proof that Tyler's mismanagement wasn't just bad strategy, it was about to become a liability, a big one. So I reached out to someone unexpected, a senior compliance officer I'd worked with on a risk audit 2 years back. Sharp guy. No patience for fluff. I asked him to review the current implementation plan, anonymously. Just a "what would you say if you saw this?" His reply. "If this structure fails during live deployment, it won't just hurt your KPIs, it'll trigger a breach clause." A breach clause. That meant lawsuits, penalties, cancelled contracts, so I added that to the file. And then I renamed the folder on my desktop, Detonation, because all I had to do now was press send. You don't need to storm the gates when you've already planted explosives in the foundation. I didn't make a scene, didn't write a tell-all post, didn't leak anything to the press. That's not how you collapse an empire like the one Tyler built. You let gravity do the work. I started by forwarding the full evidence packet, documentation, recordings, timelines, the compliance warning, to a private email used by the board's risk advisory committee. I knew it would land on the right desk. I'd worked with one of them during a procurement crisis years ago. Back then, I saved them from a $2 million mistake. This time I wasn't saving them. I was letting them fall. 2 days later, I sent an anonymous copy to a journalist who covers corporate malpractice, someone who once wrote an exposé on a similar case involving stolen software. No accusations, just an anonymous tip. Senior leadership at a mid-sized tech firm may be profiting off stolen IP while endangering client data through untested rollouts. Attached? A stripped-down version of my file. Redacted, but just enough to raise questions. Then I waited. No fireworks, no dramatic music. Just emails being opened, meetings being scheduled, board members asking quiet questions behind closed doors. Tyler didn't know yet. He was still smiling on LinkedIn, still shaking hands, still telling the world how he disrupted legacy operations and ushered in a new era of innovation. I watched every word, every click, Then came the first tremor. A message from Leah. Something's happening. Tyler's calendar just filled up with emergency calls, and the VP is unusually quiet. Then another, from one of the legal assistants I'd helped years ago. Did you hear? Someone filed a formal complaint with the ethics board. I hadn't heard, but I smiled, and finally a screenshot, sent to me anonymously, a Slack message between two senior execs. If this story leaks, we're done. Boom. The silence was over. Now came the noise, and I hadn't even played my final card. Because while they scrambled to contain the story, I was having coffee with someone who used to be a client, now a VP at a rising startup. They were building something big, and they needed someone who understood systems, real systems, not buzzwords, not theft. They needed someone who could build from scratch. And guess who they called? That's right, the guy they fired, the guy they tried to erase. Some people think revenge looks like a courtroom or a headline. Me? I prefer the sound of silence being broken by truth. It started on a Wednesday. Just after 8 a.m., my phone buzzed with a message from Leah. You need to see this. Attached was a link, an article, headline, Innovation or Infringement. Insider claims tech exec stole proprietary framework, misled investors. The article didn't mention names, not directly, but anyone in our industry knew exactly who it was about. The timeline, the project title, the anonymous sources, every piece pointed squarely at Tyler. And the best part? They published screenshots, my diagrams, my language, my original timestamps, side by side with the rebranded TylerNet version. There was no defense, no plausible deniability, just exposure. The internet did what it always does. It devoured the story. First came the industry blogs, then the Reddit threads, then the investors' forums. I watched the company's stock dip, not a cliff but a crack, enough to make people nervous, enough to make board members start dialing each other. By noon, my phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Former colleagues, old clients, recruiters who once ignored my messages. Now, they were all calling me. Hey, just read that article. We always knew that didn't sound like his work. You free to consult? And Tyler, silent. Not a tweet, not a post, not a press release. Just gone. By Thursday, internal sources confirmed he'd been pulled into multiple executive clarification sessions. That's boardroom code for, we're about to throw you under the bus, better make peace with it. I didn't celebrate. Not yet. Because the real revenge wasn't public embarrassment. It was watching the people who once praised him pretend they never met him. One VP scrubbed his name from a post. Another unfollowed him. Even Denise, my old manager, posted some cryptic message about remembering to credit your team. Now you remember. By Friday, the article had gone viral enough that a follow-up piece came out. This time, the headline was even better. Former employee speaks out, I built the system, he built the story. And yes, that quote was mine. Signed, unfiltered, unafraid. And suddenly, the silence I'd lived in for so long was gone. Now I was the voice people were listening to. And I wasn't finished speaking. By Monday morning, the company wasn't just on fire, it was crumbling from the inside out. The headlines hadn't stopped all weekend. Investors wanted answers. Clients were pulling meetings. Internally, no one knew who to trust anymore. The people who used to walk around with polished shoes and fake smiles now avoided eye contact like the floor might swallow them whole. I got a message from someone in finance, just 4 words. Everything's falling apart here. Tyler had gone completely silent. Not even his inner circle knew where he was. Rumor had it he was on leave. Corporate speak, for we're figuring out how to get rid of him without lawsuits. His calendar vanished. His name was removed from the internal newsletter, like he was being uninstalled. I wasn't watching this out of spite. I was watching it like you watch a thunderstorm finally roll in after weeks of unbearable pressure. You don't root for the lightning. You just know it was inevitable. And it hit hard. Clients started asking questions. Why had the TylerNet framework failed so quickly after being rolled out? Why were there discrepancies in deliverables? Why did the internal systems not match the promises made in the contracts? One client demanded a full audit. Another one outright cancelled their renewal. A third one, one I had personally worked with for over 6 years, announced they were terminating all collaboration until further notice. They didn't name names, but the message was clear: we don't trust you anymore. And once trust cracks, everything else shatters. The board held emergency sessions all week. The CFO issued a preemptive financial warning. They tried to spin it, talking about transitioning leadership and realigning strategic pillars, but no one was buying it. Because the truth had already leaked. You can't polish over betrayal, not when it's written in black and white, in my words, with his signature. Meanwhile, I was already in talks with the new company, the one that called me, the one that didn't need to ask who really built the system. They already knew. They didn't want me because I was a headline. They wanted me because I could deliver, because I understood not just the code and the process, but the people behind them. By Friday, I got the final confirmation. Tyler was gone. Resigned for personal reasons, they said. But everyone knew. You don't resign in silence. You get escorted out with a cardboard box, and your name whispered like a warning. And me? I didn't gloat. I didn't throw a party. I just sat down, took a breath, and smiled. Because for the first time in a long time, I didn't have to prove my worth to anyone. They did it for me. The message came in at 8:07 a.m., 2 weeks after the storm broke. Subject line: request for a meeting. Executive leadership team. No apology, no context. Just a politely desperate invite from the same people who once watched me walk out without a word. I stared at it for a few seconds before clicking open. They wanted to reconnect, revisit opportunities, explore possibilities of reintegration. Reintegration, like I was some system they accidentally unplugged and now needed back online. I didn't respond, not right away. I let them sweat. 2 days later, another message, this time from someone higher, a senior VP I hadn't spoken to in years. She asked if we could meet in person, said the board was eager to make things right. So I said yes, not because I wanted to go back, but because some truths need to be delivered face to face. The office hadn't changed. Same sterile halls, same overpolished floors, same air of forced ambition. But the people? They looked different now. Lighter. No. Hollow. Like the soul of the place had been cauterized. I walked into the boardroom, the same one where my work had once been stolen. Now they were all waiting. The CEO, the VP, legal, HR. A few familiar faces I once trusted, and one empty chair where Tyler used to sit. The CEO stood to greet me, but I didn't offer my hand. I just nodded and sat down. First of all, he began, we want to express our deepest regret for how things were handled. Your departure. It wasn't just a mistake. It was a failure on multiple levels. I said nothing. We've let go of the individuals responsible, he continued, and we're prepared to offer you a return package. Full title, expanded responsibilities, a seat at the table, this time for real. I waited a beat, then spoke, calm and sharp. I'm not here to return. Silence. I looked around the room, one by one. You didn't just fire me. You erased me. You handed my work to someone who turned it into a PowerPoint and a lie. And when he burned it to the ground, you didn't call because you missed me. You called because you're bleeding. The CEO shifted, unsure whether to defend or agree. I didn't give him the chance. I'm building something now. A team. A culture that values what can't be automated, plagiarized, or pitched over drinks. I came here today to make one thing clear. I leaned forward slightly. You don't get to rewrite history. You don't get to use me as your redemption arc. I'm not a comeback story. I'm your consequence. The room was still, and in that stillness I stood, thanked them for the coffee I didn't drink, and walked out. No badge, no folder, just the sound of heels on tile, and the door finally closing behind me. It was a Friday afternoon when I signed the papers. A new role, a new office, a new title, Chief Strategy Architect. But none of that was the real win. The real win was who I signed it with. The startup that called me after the article dropped? They weren't just growing, they were absorbing, hiring talent that had been overlooked, discarded, underestimated, people like me, and they just closed a deal with one of the largest enterprise clients in the country. One of the same clients that had just pulled out of my former company. In the first meeting, their lead negotiator looked at me across the conference table, smiled and said, "We trust you to lead this. You know how we work. You've always known." That was the moment I realized that I didn't just survive, I became necessary. Over the next few weeks, I built a team. Not from resumes, but from conversations. From people I'd seen pushed to the sidelines. Engineers who were too quiet for politics. Analysts who'd had their reports ignored. Innovators who got overshadowed by louder voices. And I told every single one of them the same thing. No one here is invisible. Not on my watch. Meanwhile, my old company tried to recover. New PR campaigns. A renewed focus on integrity. A few desperate attempts to reconnect with the clients they lost. But the damage was done. They didn't just lose contracts. They lost credibility. Because once the truth is out, you can't walk it back. You can rebrand, retrain, restructure. But you can't unburn a bridge you lit yourself. One day, I got an email. From Denise. Short, careful. Just wanted to say, "I'm sorry. We were wrong." I didn't respond. Not because I was bitter. Because I was busy building something real. Months passed. The startup grew. Our platform launched. The strategies I'd once sketched on the back of meeting agendas were now powering actual solutions. And one morning, as I looked out from the glass wall of my new office, downtown skyline stretching wide and golden, I realized I hadn't thought about Tyler in weeks. That's the thing about revenge. It's never about destruction. It's about clarity. About turning the pain into a blueprint. About making sure that next time you hold the pen. And if anyone ever asks me now, "How'd you bounce back?" I just smile and say, "I didn't bounce. I built. Word by word. Brick by brick. And this time, my name's on every damn one of them."